Okay, thank you, Maria. The project is rather large and complex, and I think by now that picture is probably clear. The project has faced a number of challenges throughout its 2 or 3 years of development. The first of those challenges was, in fact, to the definition and clarification of what was meant by the 21st century skills, and that was occupied almost the first full year. The second was to develop tasks associated with the task. You can go back off this slide for a moment, please. The second was to develop the tasks themselves and to recruit agencies that would be able to identify the notion of collaborative problem solving or learning through digital networks and develop the kind of materials that would lend themselves not only to the assessment of students but to the teaching of these constructs as well. The third challenge that we faced was, in fact, the delivery of these tasks, so that the idea of delivering a test online is fairly common these days, and it's easy to find online test platforms, but very rare to find platforms that would deliver complicated multi-user, simultaneous multi-user activities. And this also engaged the process or complicated the process in that translation issues had to be dealt with into Finnish, Dutch, Spanish, and of course the English language. So the same tasks needed to be presented in different languages, and as you saw from Costa Rica, they've redeveloped some of the tasks themselves into parallel tasks for ICT literacy. The next challenge that we had was to think about what was possible for our students to access this simultaneously, and the stability of some of the tasks involved when more than one person was engaged in the project in solving a problem or addressing an issue, an assessment task online. The stability issues took considerable efforts, and the 2 delivery platforms that were used for the pilots and trials so far, one from the Berkeley used their particular platform, which was called FADS, to deliver the ICT literacy, and the University of Melbourne delivered the collaborative problem solving through our online testing program and platform. This enabled us to give access to the students, but these had to be seen as temporary solutions during the pilots and the development phase. We then moved to scoring, the issue of scoring and coding the tasks, which is a significant challenge, because the idea was that these would be developed as online, large-scale assessment and teaching strategies, and the idea of having personal or human judgment involved in scoring this had to be minimized for large-scale assessments. So we had to develop ways of automatically scoring and coding, which Professor Kerr has outlined for you. Professor Kerr also raised a few other issues that are significant theoretical challenges that are arising as part of the project, in that the calibration of the tasks will also lead to new methods of psychometric analysis, because some of the tasks, if not all of the tasks, violate many of the assumptions that we're used to in traditional forms of assessment and testing. And so new forms of calibration and new forms of test analysis need to be developed in these coming few months. The next challenge we have is how to report back, or how to tell students and teachers about the performance on collaborative problem solving and ITC literacy, and what it means to be good or better at this, and what it means to have high levels of these skills, and what it means to have low levels of these skills. It's important that we communicate this to teachers, because we need to be able to target direct intervention. So our reporting methods need to take into account the kinds of developmental notions that students might be experiencing as they develop skills in these areas. The next issue of reporting is one that I just mentioned, and that is the teaching of these skills. Where at the moment we're assessing skills that are not normally taught in the school curriculum, but which this project has identified as being important and increasingly important in the 21st century. And so there is an issue there that we're encouraging teachers to assess students in skills that are not necessarily a direct and relevant part of the curriculum at present, but might become relevant in the future. And we need to be able to help teachers to improve a student's performance on these skills. We know, for instance, that in 2015, collaborative problem solving will become part of the core subjects to be assessed by PISA 2015, and this will place pressure on school systems and schools to be able to demonstrate student development in that particular skill itself. Bringing it to scale is an important issue, so that we need to be thinking about that as well. If we bring it to scale, then we need to be thinking about how do we influence policy and how do we influence curriculum in school systems throughout the world to incorporate these 21st century skills as an important matter. And bringing assessment to the table increases the chance that they are increased in importance. We have Professor Linda Darling-Hammond from Stanford University working on scale and policy implications at the moment, and we would expect that PISA 2015 will have a long-term effect on curriculum. In order to address many of these issues, we have several steps that the project is moving into in terms of setting up the future. The first is to engage cloud computing, because we believe that this will address many of the delivery, the access issues that we are experiencing during trials. Can you just click on that to bring up? This is there's some animation in this. Oh well. Thank you. So cloud computing will basically become an item bank, or the basis of an item bank, so that we use the many, many servers and be able to access them locally. One of the issues that we have in delivery at the moment is the distance and a geographic distance leading to some stability problems. This we hope will be solved by using cloud. That will enable us to register, deliver the tasks, to code and to contain the code, the source code for scoring and coding the materials, and leading that into the kind of reporting materials that we'll be using as well. Our reporting plans at the moment are that we will be delivering reports within a developmental framework, and this is to identify for teachers what it would be the point of intervention for each student in the task. Can you move on to the slides, please? We currently use three kinds of reports. The first one on the left of the screen is something that we call a rocket report, but it's just a central spine. The black mark in the middle indicates what level of proficiency or sophistication a student has reached. And in intervention terms, this would be the point around which the student's learning would be scaffolded by the teachers. The middle report enables the teachers to group the students into instructional groups for direct, differentiated and targeted instruction. And the third report gives the student a profile of their performance across the different strands. In this case, it might be social and cognitive for problem solving. Having reported that and given the student a level of development where their learning can be scaffolded, giving the teacher an idea of where the learning and instructional groups are in the class, and giving the student a profile of their overall development, it behoves us to now think about how do we help the teacher. So our next step will be to try and identify teaching strategies that would be matching the type of scaffolding that students might need to improve their performance in problem solving, collaborative problem solving, and ICT literacy. And in order to do that, we'll be putting a series of professional development modules online for teachers. Next slide. Those online modules will have an introduction to the project and the idea of 21st century skills. It will introduce them to the idea of developmental progressions or developmental frameworks and how to understand and use them in teaching. We'll teach them how to administer the assessment tasks and what sort of strategies and materials they will need in order to use the materials online. They'll need to be able to interpret reports and interpret assessment data to do with collaborative problem solving and ICT literacy. And they'll need to be able to link that interpretation to instructional decisions. So in a sense, our teacher and teacher development issues are also 21st century approaches to teaching and learning. So the other challenges that I raised on teaching and learning, the calibration, tasks, reporting, all of these things are issues and challenges that the project has faced during its development. And our next slide, we can illustrate that the dissemination and the issue of policy and influence is going to be addressed through a series of white papers. Just click this on a couple of times. Series of white papers that were produced in the 2009 and now available through the website of the project itself, but also it's been published through the volume that you saw on the screen previously, now available through Springer as a edited peer-reviewed series of conceptual papers and research papers, and we would refer to that as Volume 1. The second volume is currently under development and in preparation, and it will detail for people the methodologies that have been used in this project. This has been a slow and reasonably expensive process to develop these tasks, but it is the pathfinder. It is really the progenitor of following work, and the next series of developers of collaborative problem-solving tasks and ICT literacy tasks through digital networks will benefit from the kind of work that we have done and the barriers that we've broken. And hopefully in this methodology report, all of these steps will be outlined, and the future developers will take note of those and conduct the same kind of work more quickly and at less cost. And finally, a research report that will be led by Professor Kerr, who will report on the research that has been undertaken over the past few years and the kind of conceptual thinking and the theoretical base of what we're doing. This is an important quality assurance process to give the project the credibility it really deserves amongst academics and researchers, test developers, curriculum people, governance, and education systems throughout the world. I'm sure that with those sorts of thoughts, I think the challenges that I listed at the beginning of this step were basically focusing on trying to meet those challenges to set up a platform that will enable future developers to improve on what we've done. Over to you, Martina.